Hey, Captain Logos here, preacher at large, teaching the word inspiring 3 minutes at a time. Hey, at the end of each of my segments, I always say, yep, you heard it correct. Get your face in the Bible. So I figured I ought to give you some pointers on actually how to study the Bible if you're going to get your face in it. This may take a couple of sessions, but let me just outline a few pointers on what you should be looking for when you study the Bible. Now, I want to be starting about a 6-week series. Hopefully I can get that recorded and get that on the YouTube site for a real in-depth, no kidding, 6-week study on how to study the Bible. So, here we go. One of the first things you need to do when you read the Bible is you pick a passage, you pick a book. You want to determine what type of literature it is, right? Because if it's a psalm, you know it's not history. It may have some historical aspects, but it's not meant to be an historical document. So there's several different types of literature: psalms, proverbs, histories, sermons, parables, and letters. And if you don't understand which one you're reading when you're reading it, how are you ever going to know how to apply it? Right? There are certain things in the Bible that is said for the benefit of the universal church. And it's for doctrine, and it's for stuff we're supposed to follow. There are also things in the Bible that were for a specific time, for a specific instance. Right? And there's a lot of times you can't really make an application on different things. One quick thing is parables. They're not there to teach you what to do. They're there to grab your attention. Now, there's teaching things in there that we can extract from it, but if you take a parable and say, this is how I'm supposed to live my life, you would be incorrect, because that's not what that is trying to do, because it's a parable. Oh, incidentally, if you look in some Bibles will actually give you clues, because you ever seen the full justified and the non-full justified, where it goes all the way out to the edge, or it doesn't? Yeah, Psalms and Proverbs, you'll see things like that. It's not full justified. When it's full justified in some Bibles, that means it's actually a chronological history. Right? The other thing we need to understand, and once we understand what type of literature we're reading, is we have to understand what was spoken in the context of the culture and the history of when it was said, to whom it was said, before we can ever apply it correctly to our lives. Now, we have a Western mindset, all these different filters of our upbringing, our culture, how we were raised, what religion, what denomination, what part of the country, what part of the world, right? All of these things cloud our judgment. We read something, automatically jump to a conclusion of what it means. But until we understand what that verse means to the original people it was spoken to, we'll never make correct application to our own life. So we're going to have to dig in a little bit, understand what the verse is saying, to whom it was spoken to first, before we can then apply it to what God is telling me out of this verse. Right? Here's a few questions that I ask of every book. So when I go to read the Bible, here's some of the questions I'm asking myself. What is the author saying to the audience? Okay, who is the audience? You have to determine that first. And then what is the author of the book saying to the audience? Is it Judah? Is it Israel? Is it the Gentiles? Right? Figure out what the author is saying. And then what is the response the author wants from his audience? So if John is preaching or teaching, or if Jesus is preaching and teaching, what is his audience, and what is the response he's expecting from that audience? And then the third question would be, once I understand those two things, what is the response that God wants me to have? Right? So I'm going to break this here. Quick recap of what I've already said. We need to determine the type of literature it is, whether it's a psalm, proverb, history, sermon, parable, or letter. We then have to understand that we have filters. We need to turn those filters off. And when we read something, Let the Bible speak to us first before we try to inject what we believe onto what it's saying. And then ask 3 questions of everything that you read. What is the author saying to the audience? What is the response the author wants from that audience? And then what should our response be? Now, we'll finish this segment up tomorrow. So until then, get your face in the Bible.